Welcome, boxing fans. I'm back with a quick video. We're less than 24 hours removed from the big fight between Gervonta Tank Davis and Lamont Roach. A lot of controversy, a lot to discuss. One thing that stuck in my mind thinking about this fight is that Lamont Roach's performance was exceptional, probably the best of his career. And the way he performed, I believe it took away a lot of Tank's aura that he had coming into the fight. But the question I wanted to go over in this video is whether that's a good thing or a bad thing for boxing. So let's start with the good regarding this. This performance from Roach, and just to let you know my scorecard, I had him winning the fight by at least 2 points, and that's including the knockdown. And I had him winning the majority, at almost sweeping from rounds about 7 or 8 through the rest of the fight. I thought he really controlled the second half, landed the cleaner punching, controlled the real estate, pretty much took Tank out of the second half of the fight. So the reason why I think this could be a good thing for boxing is that anytime we've seen a fighter that's looked invincible or has been a big power puncher that a lot of people feared, once they've shown vulnerability, other fighters start to have more confidence and more courage and really start pushing to try and have that or try and get that fighter in the ring. One good example that we saw recently is Golovkin. He was very avoided, when he was just running roughshod through most of his competition. But once he started to show some chinks in the armor, particularly with the Kell Brook fight and then also with the Danny Jacobs fight, all of a sudden he was able to get somebody like Canelo Alvarez in the ring in his very next fight. And I think we're going to possibly see that with Tank. We know they've been talking as far as people like Devin, Shakur, Keyshawn recently, but talking is one thing. As far as getting in the negotiating room is another thing. And I think those fighters will really start trying to push that because they've seen it now with Lamont Roach that there is a blueprint to taking out Tank. Before we've seen him struggle for rounds and things like that, but always the thing that's been said is that the power was the great equalizer. Even with the Barrios fight, even late with the Gamboa fight, and I, was ringside for both those fights. You never thought he was really in serious danger of losing. You always thought it was a matter of time before the power took effect. But we've seen with Lamont Roach, once you take or can withstand Tank's power, it's a totally different fight. And this is something that the trainer, Stephen Breadman Edwards, has always talked about. The puncher in the fight is the one that can take the shots better. And in that second half of that fight last night, Roach was the one that looked like the puncher. I think there was a turning point. I think it might have been the seventh round when Tank landed a powerful straight right hand and Roach just rolled with it and came back and hurt Tank with a shot that made him stumble. And from that point on, it was a completely different fight because Tank realized that his power wasn't doing anything with Roach. And then we got what we got in the second half of the fight. So I think the fact that we now have so many young fighters and no one has proven to be that generational talent yet, I think it's going to be easier now to make these fights because now everyone has shown either a critical flaw or severe vulnerability in their matchups. We know Devin with his durability and chin. We know Loma's old at this point, so he's slowing down. Shakur hasn't been beaten, but he's had some lackluster performances. So a lot of us are starting to think he might be adverse to be getting hit. We saw with the De Los Santos fight and things like that. So that's his chink in the armor. We've seen Teo lose, and we've seen him possibly lose multiple fights that he's been able to, get some favorable judging on. So that's his vulnerability, whether he can stay focused. We know what we're getting with Ryan, with off the out of the ring activities and things like that. So he's vulnerable in the ring and outside the ring. So everybody has shown vulnerability now with Tank also showing that he can be rattled with fighters that can take his power and bring the fight to him and possibly fight him on the inside. He starts to get unraveled a little bit. I think that's the best way to put it. He was arguing with his corner, took a knee in the fight. His head got completely out of it once he was in there with someone that wasn't backing down from him once he tried to put the pressure on. So I think on the good side, seeing that we have vulnerability in all the fighters, all the young fighters that we've seen, it could possibly make it easier to get these fights with them all fighting each other in a round robin, if not by the end of 2025, at least by the beginning of 2026. Now, as far as on the bad end is the fact that as we've been seeing for decades now with boxing, just the corruption stinks so badly. And seeing that on a big stage like that, where we had so many casual fans watching, it turns people away from the sport. I don't care what nobody says. I know people have been trying to throw around that AI image about it's up to the referee's discretion about what's a knockdown. Not in this case. The rules in New York are very, very clear, and in most states with commissions are very, very clear. If anything touches the canvas besides your feet, that's a knockdown. And the fact that his knee touched the canvas and he turned his back, any other fighter that does that, the fight's if it's not a knockdown, the fight might also be over. We know if Lamont Roach did that, what the outcome would be. So Steve Willis, normally a great ref. We've all seen the memes about him and him loving to see brawls. We've seen him smile in the ring when fighters are throwing down. He basically had a weak moment, a coward moment where he was afraid to make the right call because he knows what card he was on, a PBC card, and we know who the big superstar fighter was, which is Gervonta. And he gave him a pass essentially. And it was a terrible, terrible call, and one I think he'll regret, in the future. But what's done is done. And the fact that that knockdown cost Roach, the best win of his career is unforgivable. And we know what's going to happen. We know the commission is not going to go back and say, we made a mistake and we're going to reverse the call. It's not going to happen with a fighter like Gervonta that brings in so much money and revenue. What's going to happen is that they're going to push for a rematch eventually, and Lamont Roach is just going to have to eat that, unfortunately, being the B-side fighter. It's terrible to see happen, particularly with such a good fight, and the fact that that could be a once in a lifetime performance from him, and he deserves to have his victory based on that, and he's not going to get it. He's not going to have justice. And Tank's excuse made it even worse. For people who might be on the fence about whether this was a knockdown or not, people who don't normally watch boxing, I would take it, and I can't put it up here because it would get the video strike, but there was a recent fight between a fighter named Erislandy Lara and Danny Garcia. It was a very similar knockdown where Laura popped Danny with a jab. Didn't look like a big punch or anything. And Danny just decided, I'm out of here, and took a knee a few seconds later. And the ref properly called in the knockdown, and the fight was over. Same thing with Gervonta. He can say, I had something in my eye. Well, something got in your eye because you got popped with a jab, meaning you got hit with a punch, and you decided to take a knee after that punch, delayed effect, whatever you want to call it. My eye was burning. Doesn't matter. You took a knee. That's a knockdown. And you went and got your face wiped. You basically called a timeout in the middle of a fight. When you talk about superstar benefits in boxing, that's one of them right there. So that's the bad end as far as this being bad for boxing, to see something like that play out on the big stage in a fight that had high drama and had everybody at the edge of their seats, to be have that mire of the fight. It's going to leave a bad taste in everyone's mouths. Um, so the final thing that can make this all better, well, not all better, but at least salvage it, is the fact that we need an immediate rematch between Lamont and Tank. Now, the downside is what Tank was saying is that his next fight is already set and it's not going to be Lamont Roach. But the fact that he's saying that lets me know that he's not the one that's determining his fights. So I'm hoping that his handlers will decide that we have to pivot. There's no way that we can not give Lamont a rematch after a performance like this. It was a very good fight to watch. So it benefits both of them to run it back. Tank can answer some questions and Lamont will answer questions. Was this a once in a lifetime performance from Lamont, or does he just have Tank's number, similar to the way, we've seen in the past people like Ken Norton had Ali's number? Is it a situation like that? Or can Tank rise to another level and show his potential greatness, the fact that he can overcome someone that's known him since he was a child, knows all his tendencies, but he can still find a way to win in the rematch. This is what we need to see. This will say a lot about Tank if he takes the rematch and emerges victorious. That has to be the next move. It cannot be anyone else unless unless he doesn't care about saving face. Because right now, people are still looking at it like, okay, maybe this was just a bad performance. We need to see Tank run it back and handle business. If he decides to run away from that rematch, there's no excuses. So, long story short, this could be a great for boxing or it could be a bad thing. And it really depends on Tank, who is the A-side fighter. This is one of the requirements when you are the A-side. You know, boxing goes as you goes. It can't just be you take all the benefits and get all the praise showered on you, but you also carry the crown. So when things like this happen, you have to do what a superstar would do and get back in the ring with his toughest opponent to date. There's no other option besides doing that. So we'll see what Tank does. It's still early in 2025, more than enough time for a rematch, but it's completely on him. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think I'm off base? Do you think Tank doesn't need to rematch him? Do you think he can go fight somebody like Jake Paul and it not be a problem? Let me know what you guys think. Look forward to hearing from you soon, and we will discuss the next big boxing match coming up.